Hey, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of The Suspense is Killing Me. Today, I am very fortunate to have with me the lovely Kat Silva. How are you, Kat?
I am good. How are you?
Fantastic. We had a good time talking before we came on about all the fun things and how life is going for us. You're in Maine right now. It's definitely cooler for you than it is for me here in Virginia. Um,
Yes.
what's your temp? What do you got?
Um, Gosh, I don't actually know what
Like is it in the 50s there right now?
let me check here. It's
Probably
been
close to it. We're in the 70s right now.
yes,
It's
56.
There you go. Yeah. See, you get the real autumn.
Yes. We've got some leaves changing. We're not in full like peak foliage yet, but they're definitely changing now.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, we're just getting in there right now, but it's been so wet here because we've had this tropical storm coming through and
Yeah.
it just hasn't stopped. So we're gonna finally get a little sun, but it bothers me because I know that can impact the color of the leaves here, and we get amazing
Mhm.
falls in Virginia. So anyway, I know people didn't want to hear me talk about Virginia fall. It's just
Hey,
like,
if anybody needs to plan a vacation for
yeah.
fall foliage in Virginia,
You guys got it. You've got it all. You've got it all planned out. So, Kat, thanks for joining me. We've been talking on social media for a couple of months now about getting together and talking about all your wonderful books, and your series has just got me captivated. I've got all your books right now, and we're sharing them in my house. My wife is reading.
oh,
I'm reading. Yeah, we're
that's so nice.
we're in. We are
Thank
in.
you.
But I don't have the Hallowed Oblivion yet, which we have to talk about today. A little bit of information about that would be awesome. But before we talk about writing, usually what we do on the show is I try to get people to like understand a little bit about how you got here, right? It's like Kat didn't just wake up one morning a fully fledged author adult. She became this thing. Was this something that started for you at a young age? Did you start writing young? Were you into reading young?
Yeah, when I was a kid, before I could even write, I really liked to draw. My dad is an artist, so drawing was a big creative thing for me, and I drew picture books. So I liked the narrative idea. I liked telling a story, and I would do it through marker drawings. um,
What are marker drawings?
well, just, using markers
Oh,
versus the
markers.
crayons or yeah.
My bad.
Um, and and then create books that way. And then as soon as I could write, I was writing stories, usually about haunted houses and spooky things like that. Because Halloween was just my favorite time of the year, and I wanted it to be all the time. So that's where it started. I was also really fortunate enough to live within walking distance of a library, which we went to every week
Wow,
and would just hang out at
that's cool.
for hours. And so yeah, I just had a lot of access to really great books in my community, which was nice.
So did you find suspenseful fiction at that point, or did you kind of start in a different, like reading other types of books? Like what got you? Like what kind of hooked you into reading the fun stuff?
Uh, so when I was a kid, it was like the spooky stuff. It was certainly like
Mm.
Goosebumps. That was the first big attractor. And then I also read a lot of Animorphs, and those two in particular uh, really captivated me. And then you know, probably more high school, junior high age, I was reading vampire fiction,
Mm.
the early paranormal romance before it got a little too the same with
Commercialized.
everything. Yes, commercialized is a
There you
much
go.
better word. But and then from there,
Excellent.
just yeah,
Yeah, that was it. That was the
that
path
was
to
it.
greatness.
Yeah. Yeah, vampires really were the big draw.
See, that's super cool. Was it an Anne Rice thing? Were you like, where did that start?
No, actually, it was Amelia Atwater Rhodes, who was 15 when she wrote her first
Wow.
book. And so it was young adult fiction, but In the Forests of the Night was her first book. And
Hmm.
I discovered that whole series and just fell in love
That's
with
so
the
cool.
idea of writing vampires and writing dark fiction. And it was a whole thing that I hadn't experienced prior. And and I wanted to write my own vampire universe like she
Nice.
had created, which I did end up doing years later. Um, that was my first publication. That was my first few books, was
Hmm.
the Monstrum Chronicles series. And then from there, I branched off and started doing other things.
Man, that's so cool. I love hearing about what anchored people in the beginning. A lot of it for me was I had this love for, I guess you could say it was like classic literature and gothic fiction. And I was a young kid. It just didn't make a whole lot of sense now that I think back on it. But I just like the feeling that I got. I felt like I was always in that time of year, like you said, kind of like it like trapped me in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved just dwelling on that stuff. I guess part of it is like kind of, I don't know, like you were talking on Slay House Presents, which by the way was an excellent interview with Trevor. I really enjoyed listening to that podcast, and you guys were talking about grief horror,
Mm-hmm.
and when you mentioned that, I was like, oh my gosh, this was exactly what happened to me as a teen. I was just like, angsty,
Mm-hmm.
whatever kid, and it just pulled so much out of me, and I hate to say it, but I loved being in that emotion. It
Mm-hmm.
was kind of addictive, right?
Yep.
So I don't know if it's necessarily the healthiest thing for me, but it definitely was for
Yeah.
me.
There's something to be said about a healthy dose of sadness, like watching a movie or reading a book that just like
Hmm.
uh, gets you in the right way, and
Hmm.
you're just like, God, this is so sad, but I love it.
Right.
Um, versus the actual like, oh, my life is falling apart.
Right.
I
Sad for all
don't
the
like
right reasons.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sad for all the right reasons, not the wrong ones. Oh, that's that just spoke to me when you guys were having that conversation. That really kind of pulled me in, and I really kind of it resonated with me because I feel like that's a lot of what's at the base of, I guess you could say, as a general genre of horror, is that it touches on something very real to people, and it's on the fringes a bit, no matter what subgenre it is, and that stuff kind of pulled on me. I remember being the weird kid that would sit on the bus or whatever, listening to my Discman. Yeah, what's up, dog?
Me
And I'd
too.
have my Mary Shelley Frankenstein movie soundtrack going. You know,
Nice.
yeah. Or
Um,
I was obsessed with anything Tim Burton and Danny Elfman had done.
that was me too.
Mm.
I have this memory, and it I look back on it and I'm just like, yeah, if there was a moment that could have defined what I was going to be like as an adult, this is it. It was like, God, what birthday was that? I don't know. I must have been like 15, 16, something like that. And I really wanted to go to to the store with my friends and get music. That
Mm.
was, that was what I wanted to do. And so they picked out, your typical pop 90s stuff or 2000 stuff. And I grabbed A Beautiful Mind soundtrack by James Horner. And
Awesome.
I was just like, yes. Oh, you guys need to listen to this. This is so awesome. And I put it on, and it's like this operatic Charlotte Church stuff. And they're just like, what is this? But I was so enamored by it. And it,
Yeah.
it really like got me in the feels. And
It's it moves you.
yeah,
And who doesn't want to be moved like that? You know, that's good music, man.
yeah,
That's what music's
yeah,
supposed to do for you.
yeah. And then when that composer died, I was like genuinely heartbroken.
Mm,
Um, because
yeah.
it was just like this was a formative music experience for me. And he's gone and he's never gonna make music again. And it was just like, God,
Yeah.
kills me.
It's tough, man. I mean, there's a lot to be said about how you can connect with someone through art in such a
Mhm.
deep way and never actually meet that person, know them personally or anything like that, and be moved that much by their work.
Mhm.
And not to make this, weird or anything, but I think as writers, we kind of hope our books will do that at some point, that they reach somebody on that
Yeah,
level. And it's just like that makes all of it worth it. It's well beyond all the numbers. We're both, indie pubs, and so it's like,
yeah,
we have to live in the world of like how many books are we moving and all the things, but that's not what matters. It's like meeting someone like that is what matters. And you've written some pretty deep stuff. So
um well, thanks. It's been cathartic, I will say.
yeah,
And I have had people who have reached out to me and have said, like, I've your stuff has made me think.
mm,
Your stuff has really been good for
yeah,
me that way. So, and it's always a little bit just like surreal, that
right.
experience. But um, sorry, my cat has just
No,
joined me
it's
here.
it's awesome. What's your cat's name?
This is Lemon Jelly.
What's up, lemon jelly? Oh man, that's great. No, we're fans of the pets on the show.
Yeah, I actually thought he would have joined us earlier, but he was sleeping downstairs. And my excursion to get coffee roused him.
I'm a little heartbroken that my dog doesn't come down here anymore. Like she used to, when my
Aw.
office was upstairs, she used to come hang out with me, and then she stopped doing that when I came downstairs, and I'm like, ah, I don't have my buddy chilling with me.
Aw.
So yeah. Well, lemon jelly, you're welcome on the show anytime. Come on back. Um, so did you start writing around that same time, or did you wait?
Um, so I really started writing like long stuff in high school. I wrote my first novel in high school. And of course, it was this very bizarre story, not horror. It was actually about a thief who was also a like well-known pianist, and he was going to some rich house to play for a party and was going to steal the art that was there. Some like very Thomas Crown Affair like influenced stuff. Um and then um and then did have a few things where I was writing some like more vampire uh well, I didn't finish any of that stuff. Just thinking about that, but I did have some like I did want to write the darker stuff, but I wasn't really confident in how I was going to finish it at that point. So I was writing a lot more murder mystery or thriller things. And then in 2007, I took a an adult ed course on creative writing, and that was where the seed for my first book was planted. And I spent 5 months just writing constantly.
Wow.
And and then I self-published that book
Wow.
in 2009,
Oh,
2010. Um,
wow.
and then, yeah, so that was when it turned from more than just a hobby into like, this is what I want to do.
Nice. At that point, did you envision having a small press, or were you just like focused on a book and just get the book out?
No, I really was doing it because I had these characters and this plot in my head, and I just really wanted to tell the story. And at that point, I was really excited about having people read my stuff, and but I also wanted to be in charge of it. I wanted to learn how to self-publish, which was a very different world in 2010. It was kind of still just starting.
Right.
um, there weren't as many resources out there. uh, Definitely wasn't looked upon as maybe as nicely as it is
Right.
now,
Yeah.
or as fairly as it is now. So, uh, so I will say that self-publishing since 2010, being in the industry for 13 years and just kind of like learning how it's evolved and grown has really been important,
Hmm.
and has really shaped how I've written and done things differently as I've gone along.
That's amazing. Like I didn't realize you had started self-publishing so early.
Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty much just a like, one of those had a job, had a boyfriend, broke up with the boyfriend, and then I was like, all right, I'm gonna
Book of
write
time.
this very like angsty
Yes.
vampire novel, and then like woman power. I'm gonna put this out and you know do this thing.
Is it
And
still in pub?
yeah,
What
I actually
can I ask
I
about the title?
re I re-released the three books in the series last year with
Oh.
new covers and new interiors and everything,
Oh.
because they definitely needed an update.
Gotcha.
And it's the Monstrum Chronicles series, and
Okay.
my first book was Vox was the name. They all have Latin names.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. Now, do you look back now and kind of smile, like, or do you look back now and, well, of course we look back and smile, but the reason why we're smiling sometimes is different for people, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
I work with some authors and they're like, yeah, wasn't I cute? Like if I only knew what I know now, kind of thing. And then other people look back and go, man, that might have been the best thing I ever wrote.
I
You know?
mean, so I when I went through and re-released everything, there were definitely moments where I was like, God, I had fun writing these. Like there was just so much freedom in the storytelling and the world building. And at the same time, I'm like reading through and I'm just like, oh God, this character is using a um what is it, a PDA?
Yes.
I'm like, where what was that? Like he's using a PDA?
Yes.
God. Um,
His
so,
BlackBerry.
updated that. Like, how about he uses his phone?
Yeah. Well,
Or and then there was a pocket calculator also, and I was just like, God,
nice.
ah,
Welcome to the
why?
future. Yeah. I'm writing a book about like the 60s, not about the 60s, but my book takes place in the 60s. And there's every once in a while I got to stop and be like, why exactly did I choose this year again? Because now I got to go look up these crazy things that happened in 1966. And
Yep.
I'm like, but one of the bits of feedback I got back on Bury the Child was like, hey, you need to incorporate more time relevant stuff. And that was from my editor, and I was like, oh man, I was trying to avoid that, because I don't want to. I don't want to.
No,
Anyway,
I get it.
yeah.
Oh my God, the cat just jumped on the desk.
Lemon Jelly is on the prowl.
Lemon Jelly, you are
Look,
being
as
a
as long as
massive turd right now.
as long as Lemon Jelly doesn't get the coffee, we're good.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to do anything terrible. I hope.
That's awesome.
It's a first.
Oh,
Um,
yes. Oh, it's the first time being on the desk?
oh yeah, yeah. This is a
Nice.
like I
We're,
want attention move
we're
here.
witnessing a historic event.
Yes, we are. That. But no. So the writing historical horror also like making sure that you do incorporate enough from that period so that it's like you feel like you're entrenched
Right.
in it. Um, is really important
Yeah.
and difficult. It does require a lot of research. Um, I wrote a novella in was it 2016,
Mm.
2017, which it takes place in 1925.
Oh,
It's in the 20s.
I love that time period.
And but in England. So I had to do all this reading. And I had an editor actually send me a book or recommend me a book that I had to read, which was all about the railways in England during that time,
Nice.
just so that I could have enough information to make sure that this particular scene was correct and, lifelike. But I had a blast writing that. And um, and then it also that book was made it into as a finalist for the Maine Literary Awards that year, which was
Oh,
also really exciting.
that is cool.
But yeah, so
That's
it's
amazing.
I
Did you
I
get like pretty far in the process? Oh, you were a finalist.
um
How were there like a
yeah, I
handful?
was a finalist. I didn't win, but I think there were only two. There were two finalists that year.
Oh
So,
wow.
um,
Well, they missed out. Whoever whoever didn't choose your clearly they missed out.
yes, like,
Come on. um, s-
um,
so how
yeah.
far how far ahead of the Wild Oblivion series did all this kind of occur? I mean, it was like a pretty significant gap in time between you starting. Well, I'm assuming you wrote the Wild Dark first. I know
I
it's book
did.
one.
So back, I think that really the roots of the Wild Dark started um, in 2013. I had written a couple of like pages here and there of something that I was interested in,
Hmm,
but I hadn't finished. And every year I added a little bit to it.
hmm,
And it didn't really have a fully formed plot at that point, though. It was vaguely like apocalyptic.
hmm.
There were ghosts. I definitely knew it was a New England
Wow.
piece, but I hadn't really put everything together. And voila, pandemic happens.
Yeah.
I get laid off of work, and I have this opportunity to spend time in my writing office refinishing this office because I had bought the house and this room looked very different. It was a
Hmm.
child's bedroom before.
Oh. And did it
Uh,
look like a child's bedroom still?
yes, it did. So I spent time and money redoing this office and then starting to read horror again because there had been a lapse in time
Hmm.
from just enjoying reading. And of course, that was the year that things like The Only Good Indians, the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires,
It was all happening.
all of those books came out, which were really exciting. and I read all of them very quickly and was just like, God, I need to get back into this horror sphere. I need to write more of this stuff. And I started working on the Wild Dark. That was also a time when I was hooked on a TV show called Fringe.
You know, I've
And
never seen Fringe.
so
I know
one of my favorites.
people love it, and I'm like, one day I'm actually gonna stop and watch it.
Yeah, it like I was hooked on that show. I loved
Nice.
it. And I'm sure this happens to other people, but every time you watch a show, you have your favorite characters, and you always have these like what if moments. You know, what would have happened if they had taken the character in this direction or this direction. And my problem with most TV shows is that I fall in love with a character who dies almost immediately. It happens every TV show I watch. And in this show, it happened. And I was really heartbroken. I was like, I want to know what happens, like what would have happened if this character had lived, what would have happened with these characters' friendships. So I was like, screw it, I'm gonna write this. And that's what the Wild Dark started out with, was this idea of this relationship between these two characters in this particular setting that I had created, which was you know, the woods in New Hampshire. And then from there it was like, yeah, okay, and we're gonna have a forced purgatory
Nice.
come start taking over the world at the same time that these ghosts come back. And because forests are also just something that I love. Living in Maine, they're everywhere. I spend a lot of time in them, have spent a lot of time in them. And the idea of a forest being a limbo like place that is swallowing the world was really compelling to me.
It sounds nice, actually.
I mean, if it's just a forest, sure, but it's not just a forest.
Yeah.
There's other spooky things going on. So,
Like I moved into like the center of woods, and I'm like, I'm loving this. This sounds like a great. This is like the premise sounds great, but
yeah,
within the trees.
yes, within the trees, it's purgatory for a reason.
Right.
And so that's how the story got started. And the Wild Dark was going to be just a one-off book. It was going to have a definitive ending. There wasn't going to be any more to it, but the problem was that I finished writing it and I immediately wanted to write a sequel because I fell in love with the main character. When you're writing a character that you love to write, it's really hard to break away, especially if you feel like their story has not come to a complete finish. And I didn't think that I was done with her, with Liz, who is the main character, when I reached the end of that book. So I immediately wrote the first 100 pages of the sequel and then kind of put it on hold for a little while I worked on some other things. And some of those other things were writing short stories within the universe that I could really, I sort of wanted to do an expanded universe thing. So,
Gotcha. And that was during the writing of the Wildfall, right?
yes.
So you paused partway through Wildfall to
Yep.
write short stories about the same world.
Yeah.
Now, I've got to ask,
Yeah.
what pulled you away from the storyline you were on? Was it that you just got to a point where you're like, I need to step away just for just a little bit? Or were you like, oh my gosh, I've got this amazing set of ideas, but it can't fit in this book?
So I think the thing was that I kind of hit a fork in the road, and I wasn't sure where to go with the sequel, so I stopped so that I could just take a break from it and come back with fresh eyes. And then I ended up working on another novel for a little while, which I have not finished. That one is still marinating for it's going to take some time anyway, that one.
We'll be happy when it does come out.
Yeah.
And we can all say, look, there it is. That's the one we were talking about.
And then I, rereading the first book, I just got really interested in telling one of the other characters' stories. In particular, what would have happened on, a few weeks before the apocalyptic event happens in the Wild Dark with this character. And it ended up being like, I wanted to tell a Halloween story. I wanted to write and publish something that took place on Halloween because it was fun.
Right.
So that's where the concept for this one came from. That was Hallowed Oblivion. And I wrote it pretty fast, actually. It was within a matter of weeks. Because I had published a short story also within the universe that was called Orchards, which came out in August of last year. So I wrote Hallowed Oblivion over the course of like 3 or 4 weeks and then published that in early October.
How many weeks?
Like 3 or 4.
So okay. So you wrote
Yep.
that whole novelette in 3 to 4 weeks.
Yeah. Wrote it.
How long after writing it did you publish it? You did all that in 4 weeks, the writing and the formatting and pubbing and everything?
Yep. Cover design, formatting, published.
Look at you.
Yeah, that's the
That's amazing.
When you're motivated.
Yes.
But I was also just really like gung ho about it. I was excited that I was writing something of this particular flavor, which was new to me, writing a Halloween story. And it came out, it actually did really well. I think it's the only, so far, the only like splinter short novel of the 3 that I've put out that has done the best. And it's also getting a sequel, spoiler, which is coming out in a few weeks.
Will it also be a novelette?
It's a little longer. It's I think squarely in novella territory now. So, but yes, it is still short.
Right.
And then after I finished Hallowed Oblivion, I was like, I want to write a Christmas one now. So I wrote Dan and Andy's Karaoke Holiday, which is based on 2 characters from Hallowed Oblivion and their little adventure that they have being stuck in a bar when the forest purgatory takes over their town. And I put that one out in December.
So that one came out December of 22?
Yep.
Okay. So guys, there's your Christmas read for 2023.
Yeah.
You get to like make some Canva images with like Christmas lights and like cheesy little
Yep.
It's a feel-good story for the holidays.
And that one is also, that's a comedy horror. Like that's more comedy horror than anything else. And I really enjoy writing comedy, but it's not something that I have done a lot of. That's also based on my 2 coworkers because they were excited about, they've been really good supporters of the books, and one in particular helped come up with a lot of the plot of that short story.
Excellent.
So they are based on real people who are also named Dan and Andy.
Oh, that's that. It's
Yeah.
like that real. That's awesome.
And I am going to write a follow-up for that one as well, but it's probably not going to come out this year.
That's so cool.
So
So
yes,
you've got me thinking. I've got to ask this question because just because your process with the Wild Fall and then moving into those other stories and coming back, are you more of a pantser than a plotter, or are you more of a plotter up to a certain point? Then you're like, I just gotta get going.
so it's the Planter uh,
Right. Yeah.
amalgamation. It's the like I usually have the ending figured out before I write
Gotcha.
the rest of the book. Very similar to what you were talking about, where you know the ending, you know the beginning, and you just kind of make up stuff in the
Right.
middle. It's similar to that, but usually I know what the ending is going to be,
Hmm.
and then I just have to get the characters there. Um, in some books that happens easier with than others, like the one that's coming out in a few weeks. Well, you know, the one that's coming out October 12th.
Yes.
It is very much I knew what the ending was, and then just like getting them there uh,
Right.
was fairly well plotted out, and that's because there is a definitive like this was stated in the Wild Dark. We have to
Right.
get them to that point that happens in the Wild Dark.
Nice. So this is Lost Oblivion, right?
Yes,
It comes out October 12th,
yes.
which is a Thursday, folks. We talked about that before we started filming. Um, I've I love that you're putting these books out related to your series. I'm just fascinated by it because I feel like there's so much opportunity to do that, but people don't take those opportunities, right? Like before we came live, I was talking about how I rough plotted three novels in a series, then fine plotted the first book, and then said we need a prequel, and hit pause on all of them and went and wrote Bury the Child as the prequel, which is
Mhm.
like you said, just kind of nice and sweet, not a long story, not a short story. It's barely a novella world, but it's novella, and it was it was out of the blue after I'd plotted out three novels. And
Mhm.
so I've never really thought about doing that during the writing of the series. Like I stopped before I got into those. So this is really cool to hear that you did this in series and that you were spinning these stories off to serve the same people who have fallen in love with this universe that you've created in this whole world. I also think it's a huge vote of like confidence for you as a writer that you're comfortable doing that and not feeling obligated to put those into the novels that are in the series, right? Because I feel like sometimes we get like, well, I'm planning three books or I'm planning two books. I've got to get those two books in. It's got to be in those books. It doesn't fit in that story. It just gets
Yeah.
set aside and never gets touched, you know?
Yeah, it's well, I mean, the thing that is kind of restrictive in the books is that they have a main character. It is told in first person, so there isn't really much opportunity to jump into other characters' heads. And creating these smaller stories within the same universe gives that um, gives that opportunity. Um, so so I'm not nervous about it. And it also it's the kind of thing that's like I am excited to tell the story. If no one reads it, that's fine. It's out there. I'm excited about it. Like when
That's
people
awesome.
do discover the series, they have all of these different things that they can then jump into if they would like. Um, yeah,
I
it's
dig
more
it.
just like I got the story out of my brain. Now I can move on to other things.
I dig it. I think it's so cool. I think it's a lot of fun. And that's going to all be published on Strange Wilds Press, right?
Yeah. Um, Yeah, Strange Wilds Press is my small press. And that's, yep, they're all going to be published through that.
Excellent. Um, so you guys need to go check those out. And do you sell wide?
I do. Yeah, everything is available
Perfect.
on, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. Um,
So if you've recalled before we got started, I asked about music a little bit. I'm really big on like what inspires you while you're writing certain stories. Like I could tell you like the three songs to listen to if you're reading Bury the Child that were just stuck in my head, particularly the last few episodes or few chapters, sorry. It was it was like this thing that just kept pulling me through. Like I was like I couldn't get away from the song, I couldn't get away from the story. I just had
mhm.
to go. And that was "The Sky Is Red" by Leprous, which is
Hmm.
kind of an interesting song if you've never heard it. But like, I was like, I have to write. Like, as soon as that
Yeah.
song would come, I was like, we got to go. So was there any type of music that kind of resonated with you while you were writing, like Hallowed Oblivion, for example? Because that's a Halloween-ish like time
Mhm.
period, right? Was there something that musically that inspires that story?
So all of the books on and all of the short books have soundtracks, which are on Spotify.
Excellent.
Um, Hallowed Oblivion has a very short but powerful soundtrack.
Hmm.
Um, First song is Blood by the Eels. Maybe it's just Eels. Fresh Blood by Eels. And it is just like, it's a, it's probably the perfect Halloween song in
Nice.
just like, it's got like a feel good kind of beat to it, but then also it's got something a little rougher to it also.
Right.
So that was definitely one of the songs that helped me along with that. Um, Also, the song Kids, which is featured pretty heavily in the Stranger Things soundtrack,
Hmm.
was definitely an inspiration on that.
Nice.
And there it's actually a song from the Silent Hill 3 soundtrack on there too, I think.
Hmm.
I did listen to a lot of Akira Yamaoka while working on that project, while working on a lot of the series, because it's just that very like ambient, moody, industrial
Nice.
sound. A lot of the time when I'm writing, I listen to music that does not have lyrics
Hmm.
because it is just easier to lose yourself in that. It is a mood thing.
I'm gonna look something up for you that my buddy, editor, co-author Zach Bohannon said. You've got to listen to this while you write your next book. it's all.
Okay.
It's a band that has done. They've done instrumental versions of their albums in addition to with words. It's Moonflowers,
Hmm.
Swallow the Sun.
Okay.
Anyway, Moonflowers is the album. Swallow the Sun is the band,
Okay.
and they have a deluxe edition, and it's like classical versions of their music, which is really
Okay.
cool. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll have
Something
to
cool
look.
to check out. Yeah. So he sent me that note as he was editing my book. He's like, "Hey, dude, I'm reading this chapter, listening to this song, and it's perfect. You need to go put this on." I'm like, "Okay, now I have to write a chapter to that song. Thanks, dude." So, I prefer to write to music. I don't necessarily have a preference with or without lyrics, but I know that some people just cannot think words while hearing words.
Yep.
So I guess in my brain I can kind of push it to the background and I can feel the music in the back, but it probably has something to do with the fact that I was a musician for a few years and I was good at parsing out the stuff so I could listen to what mattered to me in the moment. Especially when you're playing live because you can't hear like half of what's going on anyway. So you're like, I gotta get that noise out of my way. So so with Lost Oblivion, like literally on the horizon. Do we have any promotional stuff? Are you doing any events like in October, November, December that you want to share with people?
Yes. So I actually have quite a few events that are going on the same week uh, as the release. Let me think. The week before, I am doing a reading in Lewiston, Maine. Um, the week of, I will be at the Merrimack Valley Halloween Book Festival, which is happening in Haverhill, Massachusetts.
Awesome.
I have a table there. My books will be available at my table. So if you're in that area, please come and hang out for the day. I believe it starts at 10 a.m. and goes until 4, and
Wow.
that's at the Haverhill Public Library. Um, and then the day after, I will be in Providence, Rhode Island, at the Lovecraft Arts and Sciences bookstore with Robert Atone and Aquino Lauza.
Nice.
Lauza. I'm going to say it wrong. I apologize, Aquino. Um, and we will be doing a reading of our books there, and we'll be signing books as well. That'll be Sunday, October 15th from 1 to 3 p.m.
Nice. Well, give Robert a high five for me.
We'll do.
What a fun guy to be with. Um, you're gonna have fun, right? So what? So like, I guess a parting question for you is, what are you reading that you want to share with others that you think that they may enjoy? Like that's what really got you right now, as far as reading other people's work.
So currently, I am in the middle of reading A Pantheon of Thieves by Coy Hall, which is a really incredible short story collection.
Hmm.
Um, and it's it's just brilliantly written. So I do
Nice.
recommend that. I did just finish We Spread by Ian Reed and Mr. Magic by Kirsten White. Read those for a podcast, and that's like that's the existential horror genre in a nutshell.
Nice.
Which I really like writing existential horror, so I do recommend both of those. They were incredible reads. Um, and then I am going to be starting Rob Atone's Wrapped in Plastic short
Yes.
story collection, which will be coming out October 26th, I believe.
Yes. I can't wait to break into that one. I'm still trying to finish. And Rob, if you're listening to this, you're gonna laugh because I've been saying this literally for episodes. I've been reading the Vile Thing We Created for
Mhm.
probably 2 months now. It's my daily like bite read, and I'm jamming all these other shorter stories in at the same time. But I just love that story, and so when he art wrapped in plastic, I was like, yes, because I feel like this story's getting ready to end soon, and I'm gonna want more of what
Mhm.
Rob puts out. He's just so good.
Yeah.
And then of course I'm reading our friend Red Legault's Impulses of a Necrotic Heart, which came out a few weeks ago on the 29th of September. She's my I guess you could say book sister as far as release dates, like birthdays. Both released on the 29th of September. So check out both of those if you guys haven't had a chance. They're really, really good. Well, Kat, before we leave, I had one mention because I don't want people to feel like this is the last time they're ever going to see us together. We are planning eventually to hang out on Winter Views, which is your podcast that runs starting in January.
Mhm.
And can you just kind of give us a little info on what's going on with Winter Views this year?
Sure. So we will be entering season 3 of Winter Views. We will be discuss. Excuse me. We will be discussing
You're emotional
uh,
about it.
different. Yeah. We discuss different horror genres every episode, and what it is that the particular author in question really likes about them, um, and and enjoys writing about them particularly. So that is going to start probably the first week of January. I haven't gotten to scheduling yet, and it goes through the end of March.
Hmm.
And we will have 10 guests this year.
Nice.
You, of course, being one of them.
It's my quiet celebration for those that can't see me. I'm so happy. It's awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and hanging out and like sharing. Like, I learned so much more about your series today, and I'm really looking forward to reading all of the novellas that have spun off of the Wild Oblivion. And it's just so great to meet with somebody who is on the, like, you're in the trenches with indie publishing in the same like grief horror kind of groove that I find so many great authors sitting in, and I'm just grateful that you made the time today to meet with us. So thank you so much, and I can't wait to have you back on the show soon.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I had a good time. It's fun to
Thanks,
talk
Kat.
to you.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, we'll see you in the next episode. Make sure you go out and check all of Kat's socials. Like, you need to connect with her. She's amazing. You need to buy all the books. You need to just follow everything she's doing because she's genuine. Her stuff is great. And as you heard today, she's got fascinating, fascinating stories to share. So go get them. Go do those things. All right, guys. We'll see you in the next episode.